Welcome to SCAL6, My Favorite Things, Part 8, the rest of the properties panels. In the Part 7 video, I covered the options and settings I especially liked on the document, position size, and fill and stroke panels. In this video, I'll continue and show you the same kinds of examples on the remaining ones. The names and primary purpose of these other panels are the following. The Style panel is used to assign certain properties to any object according to how you want it handled for either printing or cutting or both. Like with most of the other settings on these panels, you can always go back and change any of these properties if needed. The Text panel is used to import fonts for temporary use, to select which font you want to use, and to change certain characteristics about your text. The Layers panel is used to organize all of your shapes into folders and groups, show, hide, lock, and unlock as needed, and rearrange the order of the layers as appropriate. The Hints panel is somewhat limited, so I'm not covering any favorites because I feel you are better off using resources in the main help menu in SCAL or visiting my SCAL support page, which is linked in the description for this video. So moving on to the Style panel, this is probably one of the most underused features in SCAL6, and that's probably because it's not typical to find something exactly like this in other cutter programs. So I'm going to show you a few of my favorites. Now in the editing video, let me just select this just so I can show something in this drop-down menu. In the editing video, I had gone over blackout and how much I like that feature, but I'm not going to cover it again because I have other things on this panel that I like equally. One of them is this weld here. Now, you're probably familiar with the path union, which removes overlap between shapes. Weld does exactly the same thing, however, it's not permanent. Now, obviously, if I do path union, I can always undo it, if I'm unhappy with it, but I have to undo it before I save the file or before I do 25 more steps to it, right? So the nice thing about using weld is that I can save the file, and when I come back in, I can turn it off. And just like a lot of the stuff that's on the properties panel, nothing is permanent, right? You can always go, oh, okay, now I've got this like this way, but I want to change it. I don't like this fill color, I want to change it to another fill color. Well, that's kind of how this is. You're welding it and then you're not. So let me just show you, in the preview, you can see that my hearts and all the individual letters all overlap one another. Okay, but if I have it selected and then I just mark this weld option, then when I go to the preview, you'll see in pale gray, you'll see where that overlap, is located, but it won't cut that way. So that's really nice. And again, let's say you cut it and you go, oh, I'm not happy. I don't like where this heart is. I want this heart, oops, I want this heart to be located just a little bit higher, or maybe this one a little bit lower, or something of that nature. Well, then you can make that change and then re-weld it and then recut it. And again, this file could have been saved, in between those two steps, and it would not be a permanent weld. So the next thing on this Style panel that I really like is the following. So here I have a box pattern, and I've typed up here, this box is 2.5 by 1.5 by 1.5. Now there is a notes function in SCAL6. It's under Windows Project Info where you can type in information. But sometimes, if you're sharing this, the people don't know to go to Project Info in order to find, something, relevant to the file. However, you can type it right on the screen. Now, right now, let me come over and open up this group. When I select the text layer, this box is 2.5 by 1.5 by 1.5, you'll see that the cut line type is set to none. And when it's set to none, that means it won't print, it won't cut, it won't do anything. It's just, it's just a little note that you've put onto the screen, to remind you of something. Like you might want to put the name of a font that you've used, or, and again, or something, about, letting you do something like a fold up box, letting you know what the overall size is going to be after you cut it out and fold it up. So that's very handy. Now then, the other thing that I really like, and I'm going to open up this group, you'll see that the rest of the project, I have a layer, the score lines, and a layer that is the cut layer. Now then, over here, and then, you can see the score lines are set to draw, and the cut layer is set to cut. Now then, let's say I have a different brand of cutter. For example, let's say I'm using a SCAL6, and I have the D24 model. Well, when I have the D24 model, over here on the Style panel, another option will show up called Tool. And so my cut layer, I can set it to the left side, right? And then you can see in this drop-down menu, there's also a right side, and the score lines have been set to the right side. So that's really cool. And then when you go to the cut window, you've got the tool left here, and you can fill out, whatever settings you want for the left side. And then the right side I have set to, well, draw pen, which is what I'd use with the scoring tool as well. And I can set whatever settings that I'd want to use, for scoring. So that's just very easy to use. You're not trying to dig into the software to find anything. These things are right here on the style panel. So then the last thing, let me hide that I like on the style panel is also related to this drop-down menu. So let's say, I have a tag that I've developed here, and it's going to be a print and cut tag, right? So I have my print layer, the group here. This is set to print plus cut print only, which means it can only print. And then the tag part is set to print plus cut cut only. It means it won't print, it'll just cut. Okay. But here's the cool thing. Let's say I've done that, and then later I go, you know what? I really, I'm not happy with the print and cut. I'd rather actually cut these out of, let's say, glitter vinyl, just those the letters and the little swirls there. Simple. You just take that and then change it to cut. And so now then you're ready to just cut those layers instead of it being a print and cut project. So very easy, very handy. Spend some time playing with the style panel because it's worth it. Now, the next panel we're going to talk about is the text panel. And with this one, there's several things that I'm going to point out. First of all, in this menu, you've got View All, and then you have a choice of favorites in this project, where favorites are going to be something you assign to your favorites, and then this project is any fonts that you've already been using. The one I like best, the one I think of to use a lot, is favorites. And so anytime I've used a font and I really like it, I click on this little heart right here, and it adds it to this menu. And so now that in this menu, I have these particular fonts, but I don't have, like 100, okay? So it makes it very easy for me to find the ones that I like to use over and over again. So for example, if I wanted to use Samantha Upright Pro, which I use a lot, then I can just select it here, and then it was easier to find than going to the All menu. Another favorite thing is this icon right here, which is choose a font file to load. And I may have shown this in one of the earlier videos, I'm not sure, but basically it lets you temporarily install any font file for use in this while you've got SCAL open right now. So, that keeps you from having to install a lot of fonts into, Windows or onto your Mac. You can just leave them off in a folder somewhere and then load them up when you want to. And so that's going to work for the three types of fonts that SureCuts a lot can use, which are TTF, OTF, and OPF, which is a special type of single line font. The next thing that I like here on the text panel is what's called tracking. And tracking in other programs is often called kerning. And what that means is that you're able to change the spacing between letters. So here's one of my favorite fonts. It's called One Bean Sprout DNA. The problem is that you don't always get a really great overlap between the letters. So for example, when I go to the preview, you can see here I've got a large gap between the T and the E, right? The A and the C aren't even touching. So they're not going to, or they're just barely touching. I'm not sure I'm going to get the kind of overlap that I'd want to use when I get ready to weld the letters together. And then maybe the M and E, maybe they need to be a little bit closer together. So it's just really easy to do this. You just go back to your text tool, right? I select over here. And then basically any letter that you select, like if I select this letter T, and then over here on this tracking, which again, this is kerning, I can just anything that's after the letter that's selected, the rest of it's going to be moved, to the right or to the left as desired. So I can move that, just move that over. And then same thing for the here, I can just grab this E if I want to move the ACH, the ACH me over, then I can just bring that over right at this point. Same thing here, I can just select the A. If I wanted to do more than one letter at one time, like multiple letters, then I could have, selected more at one time. Like I could select all of these, and then all the tracking will be happening between all of the different letters, okay? So that's another one that it makes more sense when you play with it for a while, so do that. So just, give it a try, and, and again, remember that you can just select one letter or you can select multiple letters depending on, what you need to kern. The last thing I wanted to show on the text panel is this setting called leading. And the example I'm going to use is the Samantha Pro font, Upright Pro, that I mentioned earlier. That is one of my favorite fonts. And if you scroll down the character map, you'll see that some of the lowercase letters, the the descenders on them can be quite long, all right? Some of them are very fancy and would take up a lot of space beneath the letter. So this is an example of how I end up using leading in a case like this. So I'm going to go, this is an example. And you'll see right here, look at this huge space between the two lines of text. Now, if I were to keep on typing text, I might run out of my screen here, right? And I'd have to scroll and stuff. And, I'm never going to leave it this way if I don't have any of those fancy descenders. So what I can do is hold the Control and Shift key, come over to the leading, and then decrease the leading on this particular text until I get the spacing that is more reasonable to me to use. Then I can come down and you'll notice that sometimes it does that. Just don't worry about it. Just hit your down arrow, and then you should be able to keep typing of leading. Okay, so anyway, that's the last thing that I wanted to show you of my favorites on the text panel. And last but not least, we have the layers panel. And again, I've worked with a lot of different programs that all have layers panel, and I really like the way that Shortcuts a lot does theirs. A couple of things, I'm not going to belabor this because there's just a whole lot to say, but one thing I like is that you can have groups within groups within groups. So for example, I've got this group here, but then there's a group within that. And within here, I could group together items and have more groups within this one. So that can help you keep things a little better organized. And sometimes when I get files from other people to help them, with the file, first thing I want to do is clean it up, get it organized, because too much clutter kind of drives me crazy. And especially if it's like multiple stickers, right? And they all are, kind of just lots and lots of layers. It's really nice to get things, grouped into individual groups to make things easier to track. The other thing is that here there's a drop-down menu right here that a lot of people overlook. When you click on that, you have some choices of various things that are in there. One of them is remove empty layers. For some reason, with some of the things that you can do in the program, and I couldn't come up with one. It happens to me all the time, but when I tried to make it happen, I couldn't figure out how to make it happen. But there's one called remove empty layers. You can click that. If there are any empty layers, anything in here that has nothing in it, but it just is still there, it'll get rid of it. Another thing that I really like is this show, hide, and lock, unlock, and within that, the toggle all layers. And let me show you an example of how I use that. Let's say that I want to work on something. Let's say I want to work on this no peeking thing. Now you'll notice down here it's hard to select just that no peeking, and I could select it here, right? And I can see it here on the layers panel. I see a thumbnail. I can see that's it. But again, if I get ready to try to edit it, I might run into something else. So here's something that's kind of cool. You can lock it. Okay, I'm going to lock that layer. Okay, then I can come right up here and go to lock, unlock, toggle all layers. And what it's done now is it's locked everything else but that particular word or that particular layer, right? So now that I can work with that without having to worry about anything else being moved or disturbed or getting in the way. So, anyway, that's it for the layers panel. Although again, there's many things on here that I like besides this. I just want to emphasize my favorites. Thank you so much for watching this video. As always, let me know if you have any questions regarding any of the material I covered.